reiterating the Democratic message that on the question of documents from the Pentagon, from the State Department, from the White House, and on the question of witnesses, the Republicans have voted in lockstep with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We were talking, though, a little bit about this, just even the idea, and I pressed the senator on this. The idea of trading Hunter Biden for John Bolton is on its face ludicrous. Hunter Biden doesn't know anything about the conduct in question, the president's abuse of power.
Right. So in a real trial, that would never happen. The judge would be like, I'm only going to allow relevant witnesses. Here, to make Hunter Biden relevant, you first would have to hear from the president. It's because what's really going on is it's the president's state of mind. What did the president believe the Bidens were up to? Did he have a good
Pandora's box, the president's state of mind.
Yeah, but I mean, but he would actually have to testify. I mean, the judge would not say, I'm going to let external witnesses testify about something if the president can't establish what he was thinking. So that's the way it would happen in a court of law. This is not a court of law. So you can understand the view, which is, you know what, if the Democrats are saying, you know what, we don't have anything to hide, we want relevant witnesses, we'll swap you a relevant witness for an irrelevant witness, so be it. I could see why they would make that trade.
And in practice, what we'd be talking about is the prosecution would get to call a witness or witnesses, and then there's got to be something for the defense, and it would be Trump who would call Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. It would be their discretionary decision. I mean, you could even imagine a situation where the Democrats do get some witnesses and the Trump team decides it doesn't want, certainly Joe Biden, facing them down, and maybe doesn't even want to take a risk on Hunter Biden. But the point is, a trial does require the prosecution to be able to call witnesses, and then you have to let the defense call the ones that it thinks are relevant too.
And is this the kind of narrow area where Chief Justice Roberts might insert himself and try to make it feel or look like a real trial?
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it is under the rules. It is true that the chief judge could, in fact, start to assert himself. It could be taken away by the Senate. They have the ability by 51 votes to decide. I don't suspect that you're going to see the chief judge inserting himself that way.
Let's tell a dirty little secret about Hunter Biden, though. If they really wanted Hunter Biden at a hearing under oath, all that Lindsey Graham would have to do is get the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee to tweak the rule and allow a subpoena to be issued from the Judiciary Committee for Hunter Biden or Joe Biden and call them in. This is a little bit of a bluff on their part. They own the Senate. I mean, we've demonstrated time and time again that Mitch McConnell is willing to throw precedent and rules in the trash. Have you met Merrick Garland? So if they really wanted Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in front of the American people, they could figure out a way to get them there. This is just them playing a game and thinking that all of us are too dumb to realize they're playing that game.
Well, let's deal with the stupidity of this idea, because I feel like it's getting thrown around now because it's been reported, this sort of witness swap. But
probably blown out of proportion.
The stupidity of it was something you and Chuck Rosenberg addressed yesterday. If there were any legitimate, even suspicion that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden had done anything criminal, Donald Trump oversees and has a very cozy relationship with his Attorney General William Barr, who he offered up to Zelensky. President Zelensky talked to Barr. If he wanted anyone investigated, they'd be under investigation.
He could. I mean, it's all of this has been accessible, just like Claire said. But the other thing is, it has a real risk, which is why I sort of agree with the bluff. What you really don't want to have happen is you put Joe Biden in front of the Senate and he blows them all away. Now, maybe he wouldn't. It's not like he's had the greatest debate performances. But if Joe Biden as a president...
he was very good in the New York Times editorial board.
Exactly. That is true. That is true. And he could challenge them to push-ups.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. If Joe Biden got in front of this Senate hearing and absolutely wiped the floor with them and it's like, I can talk about you, and answer every single question. They basically gave him a complete campaign commercial, and he could quit from Iowa, right? He could be done. So I don't think they want to talk about this. They want to throw this out there because really the whole plan and the whole purpose of this impeachment is the implication of impropriety. That's all they want to do. They don't really care if Joe Biden or Hunter show up. They just want to say that these are people that we want there to sort of smear and besmirch their character.
Like emails.
Right. And also, let's remember that that's also how this all started.
Right.
The president wanted the world to talk about the Bidens.
Yes.
Right.
You know, that's why he's being impeached.
He wanted the Ukrainians to announce investigations but not actually do
anything about it. So, you know, if he gets us talking about them, that could be a win from the president's perspective.
But it is so shallow, and it is revealed as shallow by Claire, who called it a bluff, and by the fact that Rudy's the only one out there doing it. I mean, if there were any question at all about anything untoward, it'd be under investigation.
Absolutely, and it would be under investigation here. You don't. If you've got Americans who are doing something wrong, you go to American law enforcement. You don't outsource that to a country that you have this administration saying is corrupt. I think the other challenge there is I think there's also going to rely on, we don't want to do the House's job. If the House wanted these people, they should have done it. And I think that you're going to hear that over and over again. And I just think the Democrats need to take that on head on. Not on the...
Well, let's take it on. I mean, that's baloney, because the John Bolton at that point was wrapped up in the lawsuit around his deputies.
My answer to it is this, which is, let's assume it's all true. Let's assume that the House messed up, that the Democrats should actually have subpoenaed people. They should have waited months for the court system. Let's assume that was a mistake, that strategically that was a mistake. What's the relevance of that? Does that mean that the Senate and the American public should not hear evidence? I mean, I don't understand the logic of taking that and then saying, okay, you know what that means? That in having a trial in the Senate, that the Senate should not do its job and that the American people now have forfeited the ability to hear firsthand evidence.
It's also where people look at anyone that's ever been, a rebellious teenager knows guilty conduct from innocent conduct. Nobody innocent of sneaking out says, look at my windows. They're all closed. They haven't been open. Nobody innocent of, stealing the car says, look at your keys are right where I left them. I mean, people have like a gut reaction to conduct that looks innocent and conduct that looks guilty. And Donald Trump's conduct doesn't look innocent.
Never has. Not from day one.
And everyone that's looked at him from SDNY around hush money the criminality is always there.
And that's why that was the sort of purpose of going after Biden to begin with. His greatest fear is running against someone who, whatever weaknesses they may have, doesn't look as corrupt as he is. And what Mitch McConnell's plan has always been is, I want to make you all so frustrated with this entire process. I want to make this seem so terrible. They want to play into the cynicism of the American people so that it all looks terrible. That's what he wants. And unfortunately, it's backfired because people are still paying attention. To the degree that the Democrats can keep treating this seriously is the degree to which Mitch McConnell can't convince America that none of this matters. They succeed if they turn us all into nihilists, and when they don't, they're losing.
So, Claire, help me talk us through what we're looking at. The Senate cameras have opened. Chief Justice Roberts is not in his seat yet, but it looks like senators are beginning to file in.
Yeah, what you see in the top right corner are the senators coming out of the LBJ room. They clearly met there. I'm guessing they met at 11 or maybe noon to go over the game plan for the day, talk about what happened yesterday, talk about the schedule for today. I've been communicating with some of them this morning. Looks like we're going to go to about 9 or 10 tonight. They're coming out of the LBJ room directly into the back lobby behind the chamber. That's directly across those doors that are opening right there is the LBJ room. That's where he hung out when he was the majority floor leader, and then he, much to the frustration of the Senate, kept that office when he became vice president. They were furious about it, and there is
good real estate, right?
That's very good real estate. So now they're going on the floor for the day. And by the way, the Republicans, I'm sure, did the same thing, and that's where you see John Kennedy coming from, down the hall to your right.
Man, he looks so tired. I want to bring him a coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you hearing from the ones you've heard from? Are they wiped out?
Yeah,
are they daunted?
They're, and keep in mind, we have 5 senators over 80. Roberts, Inhofe, Shelby, Grassley, and Feinstein. Bernie is 78. He's used to long days, so I'm sure he took that in stride. But you have, people, that was a long day yesterday. And so I think they're relieved that they got this free day, and now they know they're not going to go into the middle of the night again.
Andrew, what do you think watching these pictures, another day about to begin?
Well, one thing that was great yesterday is you really saw I thought the Democratic managers at their best. I mean, that was
all day long, really
incredible. And I've been at times critical of sort of just their presentation style. I just thought, to a person, they were really prepared, and also they looked like America. It was just as a visual, it was really shocking to see the contrast in terms of the two sides. So to your point of what we're going to see today, I think we're going to see an extremely well-prepared presentation.
And do you have higher hopes? Let me just press you on the other side. I mean, the president's team, Pat Cipollone, who Americans don't really know, so people got to know him in the context of lying about the fact that Republicans hadn't been allowed in the SCIF. There are transcripts that show Republicans asking a whole lot of questions in the SCIF.
Well, this is this old canard, which is if you don't have the facts, you argue the law. When you don't have the law, you argue the facts. And if you don't have either, you pound the table. You don't really want to be on their side on this one in terms of, the facts are devastating. So you're not going to hear a lot about that. And the law is also on the Democratic side. I think you'll hear that. And I don't think in the Senate, especially with the chief judge there, you're going to have a lot of pounding.
Speaking of pounding the table, Phil Rucker has taken a seat at our table. Phil Rucker is, of course, the White House bureau chief for the Washington Post. He and his colleague Carol Leonnig are out with an unbelievable new book that I think is germane to everything we're talking about, Phil Rucker. I mean, this is ultimately the first impeachment in American history about Donald Trump as America's commander-in-chief. It's about his conduct of U.S. national security. And I cried reading the description of his debasement of the United States military in a room called the Tank. It's where the most sort of sacred briefings, where U.S. military men and women, their lives are on the line in military operations. Just talk about the portrait of Donald Trump as a commander-in-chief in your book.
Nicole, it's a harrowing portrait that we paint in this book, and it's not our portrait. It's based on interviews with more than 200 Trump administration officials, confidants of the president, his advisors, and many of them said he's a threat to the country, that his reckless decision-making has been dangerous. The patterns that we've seen emerge through this impeachment trial emerged from day one of this presidency,
That's right.
And we document it through the book. Of course, the Mueller investigation documented a lot of that behavior as well, but there's even more, not just in the way he dealt with the Justice Department, but in the way he managed national security decisions, the way he interacted with Defense Department leaders at the Pentagon, and that moment you described where he dressed down the military brass and said they're dopes and babies.
And when you looked at the vote last night, I stayed up and watched this vote about documents from the Pentagon, and I thought if there was one on which the Democrats could prevail, I wished it was that one, because at the Pentagon, there's no partisanship there. This is the building that sends our troops into battle. They send our troops into war. Yeah. Their response to Mick Mulvaney is, "Are you serious?" That is another pattern that repeats itself over and over again. Career national security officials sort of looking at Trump saying, "Are you serious?"
Saying, "Are you serious?" And trying to teach him, trying to bring him information, bring him intelligence, help him make more reasoned decisions, and being tuned out. Because over the course of these 3 years, Trump has ground through these guardrails. And now, Carol and I describe it as a presidency of one. That's how Trump's own administration officials describe his presidency. He makes the decisions, and the people around him try to get to a yes, enable his orders, execute his orders, play to some of his conspiracies to some degree. And we've seen that certainly play out in this Ukraine episode, but there are so many other ways it manifests itself.
Just to folks on the Senate staffs of Republican members, I hear from them sometimes. It's never particularly welcome. But what would you hope people would hear in terms of people that are within the president's own party, in many instances from your reporting, within the president's own administration, in some instances in your reporting, within the president's own White House? What was the most ominous warning about Donald Trump as the steward of our national security?
You know, there were a number of warnings, and these came from his allies, Republicans who want to support him and want his presidency to be successful. And the warnings were in different areas. The main concern is the decision-making process, that he acts on impulse, on gut. He tunes out information. He thinks he has the best intelligence, knows more information about the situation than the experts in the government who are employed to study these issues. So that's one. But number two is just the way he acts, and he's become so much more confident now 3 years into the presidency that he's unencumbered, and he's really making these decisions on his own, and there's a cleanup act in the cabinet. One senior official told us it's like playing whack-a-mole for the cabinet, sort of every day trying to figure out how to fix the problem.
I hope these senators read this book. We're going to listen in now to Chief Justice Roberts as today's trial into Donald Trump gets underway.